right. First of all, welcome to our open books, opens minds, and that's what we intend to continue to do. As we open our books, we open our minds, and that's especially important in the work that we do as realtors. So, hello, Open Books, Open Minds Club, and welcome to this discussion. And one might ask, while we're even having a conversation on LGBTQ, the rights, the movement, the understanding, why is it even important for us to have that conversation? But we need to stop and think that we may be learning more about family, about friends, our associates, our clients, and it's important that we seek to understand those who we work with, and we've done that, and that's part of the work that the book club continues to do from an equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, is to make sure we understand people across different sections and the road that they've traveled and continue to travel on a daily, in their daily lives and on a day-to-day basis. This is not a political statement. It's about human rights, if anything. It's not about religion nor politics. But again, our work, part of our mission is to educate, inform, and engage our membership on topics that are often difficult. And so today, leading this discussion on the Book of Pride, some of you may have been able to get it, some may not, but on the Book of Pride. And so we thank our very own Mike Mudd for standing up to help us to understand the challenges, oftentimes the struggles, because we really need to be clear on one thing on this committee, but also as realtors, that the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination on housing on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. Unfortunately, because the law says that, it doesn't mean it doesn't still happen. It certainly does. And a transgender person, for instance, in housing, might be asked not to dress in women's clothing, but that's the life, that's who they are. A gay man might be evicted because the landlord may fear that he's going to give AIDS to someone. So those are just a couple of examples of discrimination that unfortunately still exist. And so with that, I will turn the conversation over to Mike Mudd. And Mike, thank you for your courageous stance and being here to help educate us as members as well.
Thank you, Lester. Lester, does the fair housing cover sexual orientation?
Has what now?
Does fair housing cover sexual orientation?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to answer your question correctly or not, but certainly fair housing is an issue, and you can go back and Google or whatever and find that it's a huge issue in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember if fair housing included sexual orientation or not. One of the things a lot of people don't know is, like Kentucky, we don't have a protection on a state level. We do in some communities. Louisville, I think, was one of the first communities in the state that enacted the fairness campaign, and that's been around for a while. But as Lester said, people are discriminated against for housing. People are still discriminated against, and it's for some people, it's easier to hide than it is others, and a lot of people do hide. I like to feel. Well, I don't know. I don't think like to feel. I think I'm able to hide. I can be a bit of a chameleon if I want to be, but not everybody can. So there are a lot of struggles. There is a lot of discrimination. It really does apply to housing. It really does apply to our market. People want to feel comfortable looking at homes with their realtors, with their partners, their significant others. And not everybody is. There is still that fear out there. So just to share a little personal thing. So in 1989, I was discharged from the United States Air Force for being admitted homosexual or bisexual. It is listed on my official government document, my DD Form 214, and I got a other than honorable conditions discharge. And I was an exemplary soldier. I was on the wing commander's jet. I did a good job. I have since petitioned for an upgrade. I have my honorable discharge that I deserved, but I lost a lot of benefits. I lost my GI Bill. I lost money for college. I wasn't able to get a veterans loan because you had to be in for 24 months and I was in for 23 and a half. So that has been changed. Some people in my community still battle. The transgender community, things like that, are still having some battles with that. But I still don't have a GI Bill. I still don't have veterans health insurance, things like that. And I served. So I just wanted to talk a little bit of my personal experience. I have been denied jobs because of that in the past. So I don't share that with a lot of people, but I feel comfortable sharing it with this group. So this book, for me, I've been listening to it. I'm probably about halfway through. And I was just kind of wondering, does anyone have any thing that sticks out? Any of the stories that they've listened to, those that have read, that have stuck out to them, that has spoken to them?
I was surprised, Mike, how he uses the word queer in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of like the N word, the Q word. I didn't know. And I'm thinking probably if you're not a gay guy and you use the word queer, it may not go over so well. I don't know. I just felt like that was a word that was probably taboo.
So I'll say that has come along. I guess the younger generation have, I think it's along the same thought pattern as the African American community. The community is using that term. They're taking it back and using that term because it is different. And it does, it's the context it's used in as well. Because if somebody uses that, if I hear it, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm from Valley Station.
It reminds me of Archie Bunker, because that's what he used to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and he didn't say it in a positive light.
No. And a lot of people haven't. But again, I think we as a group are taking that word back to describe, because you have LGBT and you have all these different letters, and I think the word queer just encompasses that whole group, the queer group, different.
Got it.
Okay. I just
I'm sorry, go ahead.
jump into the Casey Potter, who was born in Fallsburg, Kentucky, which I do not know where Fallsburg, Kentucky is, I admit. But as the dean of Vanderbilt, that he didn't feel like he could come out until after he was through his whole career. And it was just really interesting, I think, reading about a gentleman that he had to talk to who wanted their room changed because he was gay. And then that the kid who was gay ended up committing suicide by jumping out a window. And he knew more. It was just reading that just hurt my heart so much, knowing that so many people have been feel like they can't live their truth. and how many other kids or how many other students perhaps bullied this person or anything else, to the point where he thought dying was better than coming out as his truth. And it just breaks my heart knowing that that's reality now. And in 1967 or something, when this was in the 60s, it hasn't changed that much in certain respects. So that just, I love the way this was written also, of so many different people. So thank you, Mike, for this this book, and thank you, Carter, for letting me borrow it. So
one of the things that I did notice is there's a couple stories in there from Kentucky. There's a couple of people that are from our state, which I was surprised to hear. So, and it is true, you know, one of the big things that I can speak to is when you are coming out, your fear, first of all, you've had to deal with it yourself. And your fear is you're going to lose that support system. You're losing your family. You're losing your foundation. That was a huge fear of mine. I assumed that I'd lose my family because nobody would understand. And we had struggles. My mom and I had struggles, but we got through it. It's tough, but there are a lot of people that don't feel they can, and there are a lot of lives that are taken because of this, because of the discrimination and the misunderstandings that are out there. One of the things that I noticed was the diversity of people and the overcoming and the things that a lot of the stories in there that people have accomplished being involved with government and politically involved, holding some pretty high positions that, you know, that they've worked themselves up into because of their what's the word, activism, because of their willingness to stand up and stand out a bit.
Mike, there's a story early on, almost in the very beginning, and it talks about a person and Marcus. And Marcus was, they said he had carved his own path, but he was designated, they said, female at birth. But later on, he took the name similar to Mary, but people still refused to recognize him. They instead said that he was wrong for trying to change basically his identity. And he actually discovered that he had feelings for both men and women. And so it was the term of bisexual at that point that he went to, and so from that standpoint, what that person experienced, trying to everything from prayer to people just telling him in life that in general he was wrong, and how he even came to hate himself because he wanted to be what others wanted him or said that he should be, or what she should be. And I thought that was pretty strong, because oftentimes you lose, you don't know, only lose the opportunity, like you said, to work, but the one might lose the, if you can't work, you can't buy a house, you know, unless somebody gives you money. But just a myriad of things in life that, you know, we see a person and we just say, oh, that person is gay. Or we say that person is a lesbian or something like that. But this book helps us to understand that these are people still often fighting to be recognized as who they are. And I just thought that was pretty compelling, even in the very beginning of the book.
Mike,
I agree.
you let off with asking if LGBTQ was covered under fair housing. And I was just doing a little research. I mean, it's kind of like it is not explicitly, but more implicitly. But it says that Joe Biden on day one issued an executive order that expands that, and that HUD determined that it is in fact covered. So I think if you just read the fair housing, it's like not a protected class in the way it reads, unless it's, you know, age or, you know, whatever, sex doesn't really, that's not that kind of
Right.
sex. It's male, female.
Right.
So, but I think this executive order does cover it.
But
And-
I do want to say to the state of Kentucky, though, it is not in the Kentucky Fair Housing, and there's been a bill filed almost every year by our representatives, some representatives in Louisville, and I have always supported it, and QRT doesn't always support it, and it is sexual orientation is not in the Kentucky Fair Housing Statement.
But does federal law trump state law?
Yeah, so the federal law, what I found is that the federal law, and I didn't, this didn't have about Biden's executive order, but that it would include sexual orientation discrimination for housing programs administered by HUD. It was very specific.
Okay.
Or subject to a mortgage. So it's still not, I don't know what the executive order says, but we have work to do in Kentucky. There's only, what, 7 towns now that have adopted sexual discrimination.
I was reminded last week during a CE class with Lee Brown that the Realtor Code of Ethics includes sexual orientation and gender identity as well.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's shocking to people to know that they're still, you know, still not protected. And that's actually really, it makes me a little emotional that even in 2021 that we're still dealing with this. We're not protected. And a lot of people do discriminate. It's tough. I put on a tough shell that, you know, but it does affect you. It affects you as a person. It affects you mentally. It's tough. It's tough to be different. And I think that's a good thing about this DEI committee is bringing a bunch of people together and being able to talk about these things. And these things do relate to our business. These things do relate to realtors. These things do relate to the people that we serve. And the better we understand where people come from, the better we are as a group as a whole. And not just the majority, but everybody. So one of the things that I noticed about the book is I haven't heard any stories yet about me. I just consider myself just a plain old gay guy. I'm like, I grew up, I played with trucks. I like guns and cars and getting out on the boat. And I don't have any other, I guess what you would consider what I used to always say is normal. I just want to be an average normal person. And even me in the community, I'm learning a lot from this book because there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand. There's a lot of stuff about transgender and gender identity and pronouns and stuff I don't get. I'm confused. But one of the big things I've learned is if you come across somebody that has a different pronoun that they like to be called, or their dress doesn't match what you normally would assume with how they present, male or female, just ask them, like, how would you like to be referred to? Do you have pronouns that you prefer? I just want to make sure that I'm respectful to you. And that will go a long ways. And that will also give you a lot of loyalty from that person as well, because they know that you are welcoming, they know that you accept them, and you may not understand everything, but you aren't judging them, and you're there to help them just like you'd help anybody else. What else, guys? Any other stories that have stuck out to you?
Well, Mike, one of the one of the stories that stuck out to me, part of that story anyway, was that one particular character, and I'm the most horrible note taker and remember of names.
Yeah,
and
me too.
But the story, it stuck out to me that one particular person, because of their love and respect for, I think it was their mother or grandmother who had high positions in a church maybe or something like that, they actually moved away from their family to respect that person. And, you know, that just kind of struck me, you know, I wouldn't want any of my family members, you know, we don't always agree on things, you know, and that's fine. It's just that we still have to respect each other and treat each other, you know, with fairness and kindness. But, you know, that kind of struck me and hurt me to think, wow, you know, what if one of my children, because they know, you know, maybe my thoughts on a subject matter, move away from me and isolate themselves and things like that. That just really struck out to me. You know, I like this book as well because of the way it was written. It's more or less stories. And, you know, and I think it was in maybe his introduction. There's a preface introduction, all that stuff, right? But he was talking about, you know, he had to get these stories told so that we didn't lose these this documentation of struggles
History.
and history and overcoming, and you know, and that's a true thing. You know, I would like, you know, to read. It's opened my eyes to read other books to, you know, gain more understanding and just know, you know, about other people. You know, we don't all have to be the same again. You know, you don't. It's me and Mike have had this conversation. You know, he said he can be a chameleon. Well, you know, I think about that, you know, his story, then he can walk into a room and be a chameleon. And I disagree with him. It's Mike. But but you know, it it makes you think about those people, you know, who, you know, like Mike said, can't hide themselves, and nor should they have to. You know, we talk about Mike all the time. Me and Mike talk a lot, you know, and that's good. And that's one of the best things. I think that's one of the best things this book club is putting out there, is just a format for people to talk, right? And to discuss. You know, again, you don't have to agree with everybody and on everything, but just to have a good discussion, and maybe you'll learn something, maybe the other person will learn something. But I don't think people, Mike, you shouldn't have to go into a room and be a chameleon, because, you know, I think about myself. You know, I can't go into a room and be a chameleon. You know, I'm going to be a black guy wherever I show up, you know, but you know, and I wouldn't imagine having to try to hide myself. So, you know, some of these stories really make me feel for people. And then there was one story where the lady, you know, she just thought she was forgotten, you know, and until somebody came to get her story. And I'm enjoying the book. I've still got a lot left to read. I'm doing some on audio, but I'm enjoying the book, and it is opening my eyes. They've been open that, you know, we should treat people with respect, whether we agree with them or not.
Yeah, hey, Carter, one of the things that you know, your comment about them leaving, a lot of gay people leave where they're from and go to bigger cities, go to cities. San Francisco, New York, those have been cities where people have flocked to, but not just gay people, or minorities have flocked to the bigger cities to have some more diversity. And we haven't been any different. You know, you're exiled from your churches. You know, a lot of gay people leave religion. And no matter your beliefs, everybody should be able to hear what God's word is. You shouldn't be ostracized from church because of something that they don't like or they believe is a sin, because there's sin in every pew of the church. And I struggled for a long time with religion myself, and I love religion. I love God. I'm a Christian. I've been to a couple of churches. I have found my home, but a lot of people don't, and I think that's really sad. A lot of people will shy away from those things, or just repute religion altogether and God, and they so that's just another struggle as well that some of us take for granted.
You know, something else that continued to ring throughout the book was, and it correlates other battles with civil rights and as well, and that's what the meetings that had to take place often were secret meetings or something that so that they wouldn't get attacked for being simply who they are, and
Arrested.
And that just continues throughout the entire book. But people didn't give up. You know, this movement. We often talk about movements with regards to discrimination, and this movement, I can remember even, and the book brings back those thoughts, being driving down 2nd or 3rd Street downtown Louisville, and listening to the radio when they were talking on the radio about the movement that seemed to be taking place in Louisville, and some people were really concerned that strategically this movement was taking place right here in our city. And if you know the name Carla Wallace has been very active. Carla Wallace being a gay person herself, or I don't know if she goes by gay, lesbian, I'm not sure which one. But you would often see her aligned with people within other movements as well. And I thought that was interesting on how, again, in the book, you've got different groups fighting for equality, acceptance, recognition, understanding, and oftentimes they come together as well.
There was a guy in there that did talk about housing, and him and his partner at the time were, trying to find housing, and they were turned away because of their relationships, and they were asked, "What is your relationship?" And that was back quite a while ago, but it still occurs now. Are you all familiar with Stonewall? Who all knows what Stonewall is?
No,
Anybody?
I'm not.
Stonewall was a bar in New York in the 60s, and it's where our movement really caught fire and took shape and really started to progress. I liken it to a small version of Selma, where they're walking across the bridge because they're tired of being beat and the police beat them. Stonewall was the same thing. They were being arrested and beat, and finally a group of drag queens, they stood up and they fought against the police. There was a riot, and people were beat up and taken to jail, but that was where our movement really, it's where it started to explode. That was where it really started to happen. So I've actually visited the bar in New York, and it's a small little hole in the wall, but it's still there. And so a lot of people are surprised to hear that there is an actual history behind all of this, and movements and groups and things like that. So
Mike, are you comfortable to share if you have experienced any discrimination professionally with
not in real estate? Yeah, but yes. I mean, I was discharged from the military. I was a paramedic, and there were some jobs that I applied to that municipal services, Jefferson County EMS at the time, they found out, they withdrew their offer. I wanted to be a cop. That was my goal. That was my lifelong dream. I wanted to be a police officer. My stepdad was a homicide detective, and that's what I wanted to do. And I struggled with that. I applied year after year. Finally, in 1999, I was hired by the Louisville Police Department. Even though all of that, they knew I was very upfront. Excuse me. A week before I was supposed to start the academy, they called and said, hey, the state just enacted a new law that required you to have an honorable discharge from the military. And at the time I had an other than honorable conditions discharge because of, and they couldn't take me. Even though they had extended the offer, I'd been fitted for uniforms, everything. I was ready to go. And because of that, I couldn't. And I finally just stopped applying. I just feel that God had another plan for me, and I enjoyed being a paramedic, and I made a difference in some lives in another way. But yeah, that's been tough. I've been approached going out to the clubs before, people beating people up in the alley, going to Connection. Luckily, I didn't get beat up because I got a big mouth, I guess. But that stuff happened right here.
How about real estate related? How have your fellow realtors, of course, I guess they don't, not like you have a, wear a badge. I mean,
no, I don't feel that I have, but I still, when I meet people, I've been involved with, I've gotten involved with other committees with the state and stuff. It's kind of a big deal to talk about my partner or something like that. I'm still not comfortable in some settings. I'm still not comfortable when I go to the lake sometimes, depending on where we're at with my partner, letting people know or looking as if we are together. Still not comfortable doing that, even in the city, even within the city limits.
We had, or I say we, my real estate partner and I had an email come through with a screenshot of an agent in town that is openly married to his husband and uses a lot of hashtags of gay husband and things like that, and had one of the ugliest things I've ever seen written within the last 6 months come through. And and then other agents piping in. It was horrifying, Mike. And just the fact that the broker didn't stop it and that nobody else, and we did say something because it was just wrong, but that's within 6 months of. And I can't imagine for these gentlemen in this agency, what other agents actually say to them, or if they say we don't want to show their house, or we don't want to work with them because they're gay and they're married. I could totally see that after reading what I read of agents in an office of people I knew pretty well.
Can I interject? Suzanne, Charles is in the waiting room. Thank you. Sorry.
Been let in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I finally got in.
It's it is tough, and we do need to understand each other. Again, it goes back to discrimination on housing. We're not protected. It goes back to being involved. It goes back to protecting everybody in our group, not just our consumers, but us as a group, us as an association. Everybody should feel welcome and feel welcome to be who they are, no matter how they are, because we all are on a spectrum. And that's what I like about this book, is just being able to, there's a spectrum, and there's a lot of people out there and a lot of stories that haven't been told. And I really appreciate you guys listening and reading the book and trying to understand my unique perspective.
I want to interject something here.
Sure.
One of my friends, and
he is a friend that I grew up with. He's like 2 years younger than me. But at any rate, he is gay. And he came from a poor family. So he worked like 3 jobs to get through college. Fantastic gentleman. And so he was raised in our community. And so our high school band, he was a really good, a good band member, do just about anything. So he worked with our band parents and worked with kids all the time, went to band camp with them, the whole 9 yards. And so when he got his college degree, I was instructional supervisor. And so he put in his application. We had an opening. He had a business major. We had an opening at a school. And so the superintendent, he had worked in some programs that we had at central office and kind of getting his foot in the front door. So anyway, the principal of the school that had an opening that he well qualified for, he told the superintendent, he said he's gay. He didn't want him because he was gay. So superintendent called me down and he said, Brenda, I want to know, is so-and-so gay? And I said, yes, sir, he is. Now, he really tries to, like Mike says, not let everybody know that he is, but in our community that I grew up in, we all knew. So anyway, and he does live with a partner, but his family lives all around him. So if somebody calls, that was his nephew, okay, that answered the phone. So I told the superintendent, yes, he is gay. And he said, well, would you be afraid for him to be around children? And I said, no, sir, I wouldn't. I would be more afraid that he would mother them to death because that's the way he was, And I said, I would be more afraid of that. And we'd actually had a band director who had resigned and took retirement because he had been molesting some of his members of his band. If you wanted to be head majorette, you were his sexual partner. And so that all came to light, and he had a choice. Either you retire because he's had his time in, or we will bring you before the education, we will report you to OEA. And I said, I would be much more afraid of some straight teachers being around my child than I ever would him. In no short, and I mean, there's no way I would have ever been afraid. But that was a comment, and I thought, if this had been a straight person, we'd never heard this. And it's sad. It really is. But just wanted to share that with you, that they are discriminated in employment constantly.
And it automatically goes back to sex. And that's not what it's about. I mean, at the end of the day, it is, but that's not what it's about. No different than anybody else. I want the same things you guys want. I want to have a home. I want to have a good life. I want to be treated with respect. I want to be left alone. If you don't like me, leave me alone. I'll leave you alone too. I don't want to be around you. There's a lot of people I don't like. A lot of people in my community I don't like. Just leave them alone.
This gentleman was hired, and he is now a retired teacher, a fantastic teacher. Seriously. We would have lost a good educator had they not hired him. So just so you know.
That's awesome.
I think that was my favorite, just listening to the story. I've been listening to this book more so than reading it. But no matter who's talking, no matter, it's the constant themes of dignity, community, having your circle of friends, being business owners. I loved hearing about the folks who owned a bar, owned a club, whatnot. They found their place in the world to be a business owner. And, I think there's dignity tied up in housing. There's dignity tied up in running our businesses. And those were just the themes that, it really didn't, those types of ideas carried through almost every story. And again, it's just like you said, Mike, those are the things that everybody wants, no matter what package we necessarily put ourselves in or we come as. That's really all we're looking for. And so it's just interesting to hear those perspectives. And be disappointed for folks that they've had to overcome the things that they've had to overcome to just achieve those basic things that we're all looking for. But thank you for introducing this book. I think it's interesting perspective, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, I have to give the credit to Lester. I think he got the name from someone else. I'm not a big reader, but when he brought it up, I read a little bit. I was like, this will be a good book. So it's a good book.
As we talk about the book in particular, and Mike, I can't take credit for it. I can remember it was a group of us that were actually looking and making sure we got a book that we could read and we can understand. And so that was a decision that was made, and I'm glad that we did, because it's such an easy book to read. It just tells the stories of simple people, you and I, but they may be different than us because it may be of their sexual orientation or whatever. And so, having said that, but it doesn't mean they don't want to do all the same things that we want to do in life. And so I think one of the sections, the early sections in the book, talks about community. And you talked about, in looking at the book and reading the book, how diverse the members, whether they were gay or whatever, whether they use the term queer to identify themselves, just how diverse. So we oftentimes don't know and don't realize. And I got to tell you, Mike, I don't know how long we've been in the office together, but probably last year I realized that Mike was gay only because somewhere in the conversation something came up and he said something. I was like, okay,
probably Carter.
Yeah, well, no, Carter didn't out you or anything. But I thought, people have this thought that they see people and they know that they're either gay, straight, lesbian, whatever, and that's what the book talks about. And then it goes into, there was a gay bar, and I can't remember where it was, but it gave many members a safe place to go and to be able to talk. And it reminded me about this book club in particular, being a safe place for all of us here to come, whatever that challenge was, whether it's a challenge from that women have had in the business, or discrimination from housing, or people because of their race. But that also stood out in the book, having that safe place to go. So I was just, it encompasses a lot, but when you hear people tell a story and how that little bit of a story, because these aren't books on people, these are stories, short stories of somebody's life, and how much difference that little story can make in the world that we live in, and with the business that we do. I've got, even right now, I was reminded by a realtor, which I thought was surprising, just in the last week. And they said, well, she and her wife are coming to look at the house. And I didn't need to know that, but I thought it was interesting, as it made me think how one might react or could react, or how we should react, which we shouldn't, it shouldn't be a thing we even need to react on. But I thought it was timely to get that. It wasn't used to discriminate, but it was information that, to be honest about it, I personally didn't feel like I needed. But still, it's there, and we have to.
They felt you
be
needed
caught
it.
off guard. What was that?
They felt that you needed it.
Yeah.
it was kind of to prepare you. So there wasn't a bad reaction when they showed up.
I've got a question, Mike. I've often
Yes,
wondered
ma'am.
about this. People who seem to have a homophobia, you know, whenever somebody mentions that they're gay or they know that they're gay, and then it's like taboo, I don't want anything to do with them. I always call it homophobia. And I wonder, what is that? Is that they may have those tendencies and are afraid?
I don't think there's any one thing, Brenda. That sometimes that's the case. Sometimes their personal beliefs is the case. Sometimes their religious beliefs are the case. I think it's lack of education. It's lack of having talks like this with people to just understand they're just normal people too. I think that's a lot of it. A lot of it is fear, and fear that, you know, just fear with any group that is trying to advance any of their personal rights and things like that. There's fear behind that it's going to somehow infringe on that person, either by their rights or that they're going to make a move on them or something. And I've had guys, you know, people said, I'm like, trust me, you're okay. But it's a lot of it, I think, is based out of fear. You know, there's not any one single point. I think it's similar to people that react to females, you know, misogyny, you know, any other minority. I think a lot of it is based out of fear and just lack of education, and lack of knowing those people and having an open mind, like our book club, open mind, just having an open mind to get to know people and understand them as best you can. You know, there's one other thing I'd like to say, and I had this discussion with somebody recently. Why can't some gay people just be gay? Why do they have to be really gay? And lisp and things like that. And I just want people to understand there's a spectrum of personalities and how you present, and we all come across differently. I come across differently than some of my friends do. And it's usually, there's always an exception to the rule. It's usually not fake. It's usually just a spectrum, and people are caught in between. You know, it's no different than me having a stutter. I don't know if a lot of people here know that I do have a stutter, but I do. And some people have a lisp. Some people are more feminine. I've known heterosexual men that are more feminine. So we all live not only just our sexuality, but how we present and how we come across in this world on a spectrum. There are females that are more masculine, more feminine. There are females that want to wear jeans all the time. Females want to wear dresses all the time. We're all a spectrum, and don't judge people on how they present. Let people present how they want to present, and just respect them, no matter what they present as.
Mike, this is Charles.
Uh-huh.
And I appreciate, of course, you know, we've been friends for a while. I got a question that I'm just curious as to how you deal with it specifically. And I've read the book, the 75 different stories that are mentioned. So though I have not been, and I apologize, I've not been as involved in the book club as I was originally hoping to, just because of my schedule and everything else that's going on. But every book that you all have discussed, I have been a part of. But here's a question that I have. I've tried to treat everybody equal and treat everybody the same. But if you hold a strong religious position that disagrees with a choice that others make, for example, for my granddaughter lives with her boyfriend, which goes against my religious position, but I still treat and love her with respect. How do you deal with those different issues?
Well, so for me as a Christian, people are going to do what they're going to do. It's not my job as a Christian to judge them. So as a Christian, I think we just respect people no matter what their decisions are. Now, if it's your own family and things like that, the best you can do is raise your family with the morals and things that you believe in. But I don't think based on religion shouldn't have anything to do with how you treat anyone or how you interact with them. We all have different beliefs and we all gravitate toward people that have similar beliefs, but you just treat everybody, whether you believe what they do or not, with kindness and respect. It doesn't mean you have to be their best friend or they have to be involved in your life. Is that does that answer your?
Well, I think on that one I agree. I think my question would go a little deeper than that. Is if someone, and I use my granddaughter just because it's personal to me. My son did the same thing, drove me nuts when he lived with his girlfriend before they got married. Just, I just would call him when I talked to him and would explain to him that, because of the relationship that I have with him, that we would have a longer and in-depth conversation. But when someone who has a conservative religious position that would maybe disagree with the lifestyle that others have, whether it's homosexuality, transgenderism, whatever else it happens to be, they're treating others with respect, but they may disagree there. How do we all of us work through that particular issue?
So,
in your opinion?
So a couple of things there. First of all, I don't consider being gay a choice. When people use that word, that's offensive to me, because who in the hell would choose to be discriminated against and beaten, killed, and fired from their jobs and things like that? So it's not a choice. And it's not, lifestyle, we all have our own lifestyle. So some of those terms can be offensive. But I go back to, it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what I believe. At the end of the day, it's not my business. My business is to love people and to treat other people with respect and kindness, no matter what they choose to do. Now, if you interact with them, great. But if you don't want to be around those people, then don't be around them. But in this business, as far as business is concerned and housing and things like that, you got to put some of your own personal beliefs aside and not discriminate against people and do the right thing. If you don't want to work with somebody, then send them to somebody else. If somebody doesn't want to work with some gay people, send them to me, because I'm happy to work with them.
Sure. And I apologize for blindly offending you. I wasn't trying to. I was just trying to come up with the right terms.
I'm just letting you know, because a lot of people don't know that. Carter and I have went around about that a few times. I'm like, that's actually offensive. So part of being in this group and being able to talk is letting people know, hey, I just want you to understand where I come from when I hear things like that. So I'm not offended. But okay. I don't think, Charles, I don't think that if someone is conservative and someone is religious or someone is liberal and doesn't even believe in God, what does that matter at the end of the day? As humans, we just respect each other and be kind to each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've got a number of my clients. I promise you, I probably will never refer a gay client to you unless they're in Old Louisville, because I don't do business in Old Louisville. But I will serve the ones that I have, and I've got quite a few. So I'm asking more so just to understand, because in light of the whole conversation, we want to make sure that we do treat people with respect and kindness, and that we are on both sides of the aisle, that we're trying to be open and treat people fairly. And so I was just curious.
This isn't an aisle issue, so it sounds to me.
Okay, well, I'm using a term that and I apologize. I'm trying to find. I want to be open to folks who may disagree with me in certain areas. I'm a UK fan. I got friends of mine that are U of L fans. If I could use that as an aisle. People who may disagree, we do need to treat folks with kindness and treat them as unique individuals. And so for that part, I'm there. Was just trying to understand.
And
I don't
Charles,
understand.
I like the
After you respond, I think somebody, Carter has
Yeah.
been raising his hand for a
And-
while too.
yeah, and I like and Charles, I like the example that you used there to kind of go along with my point. I like the U of L UK thing, right? That's an easy one that everybody can kind of get on board and understand. You know, just because you're a U of L fan, and I'm a UK fan, which you know it's the other way around, right? I'm a U of L fan. It doesn't mean we don't go to the same game and we don't enjoy the same game, right? We all stand at the concession stand and get our beers and our popcorn and whatever else is up there. And you may wear your blue, I may wear my red, but we're at the same game. We both have the opportunity to enjoy that game. So this is life. So the thing, this is one of the things I talk to my wife about. Anytime I disagree with her, sometimes she used to get mad at me because I wasn't respecting her opinion and this, that, and the other. And the thing about it is you're not respecting someone's opinion. You just have a difference of opinions. What everybody has to realize is if I don't agree with you, right, that also means you don't agree with me, and that's okay. That's okay. We still all have the rights and privileges to live this life, to have a great life and family, and just enjoy all the fruits of this great country that we live in, right? And so it's okay not to agree with people. You know, I may be Christian, right? But if you're not Christian, I'm not going to come to your house and, you know, overwhelm you with my Christian beliefs. You know, I'm going to respect you in your household. If that's something that I cannot do, if you do something in your household that I cannot agree with, then I'll just respectfully not come to your house, you know. But it doesn't mean that I have, that, you know, that I should treat you any differently, especially as far as, you know, housing and things like that, right? To keep it with what we deal with. And so that's the biggest thing, you know. I'm a U of L fan, you're a UK fan. Let's enjoy the game together, right? And get some popcorn. So, and I love that me and Mike have had, and you know, Charles, you struggled to find some words there. My brother, I did the same thing, and let me tell you what, Mike don't have no problem letting you know that the word that you did choose was not the word that you should have chosen, right? But we've got that same thing on the African-American side, right? There's some trigger words, some trigger things, but we're not going to know what those things are if we don't discuss them, you know, in forums like this and friendship and things like that. So I think that's a good thing for this book club. Again, open books, open minds, that we learn from each other, and move forward. You know, we have to be those pioneers of discussion. Everybody's not, I mean, heck, you can't get 12 people to agree on one vote. You know, you're not going to get the world to agree on it, but we just have to lead that discussion and make sure people's minds are open and respect opinions. You know, take the time to listen. There's some things Mike's going to say that I am 100% not going to agree with ever, but I have to respect him and sit down and give him equal time to discuss his feelings that he gives me to discuss mine. And so that's, but that was an excellent point there, Charles. And I echo you. Sometimes it's hard to find the right word to say to get that question out. But I liked your U of L UK example there.
If Carter, thank you for your response there. We've got one last comment, and then we're going to turn it back over to our chair, Elizabeth Monarch. But David Earls, you had your hand.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You know, I'm a parent of a bisexual daughter, and I've got a niece who recently got married last summer. And for my wife and I, it was a difficult acceptance of my daughter's relationship. We have a deeply religious background. You know, I'm sure as Charles, as many of us do. So for us, it was totally wrong. And one of the things I took from this book as I'm listening to it is many of the parents had went through the same journey with their children. So, you know, I told Lester, I said that I'm going to probably listen to this book because I was ready for a biracial relationship, but I wasn't ready for a bisexual one. And I had that conversation with my dad before he passed. You know, it takes us a while to overcome the prejudices that we've learned, whether it was from our church or from our family or neighborhood, whatever it was. You know, we're all in a learning process. And I'm glad to be a part of this book club. I love my daughter, and I don't always agree with choices people make, but I still love her, and I'm accepting now of her choices that she's made. And I think Charles is probably accepting of his son and daughter living together now, knowing Charles. But anyway, that's what I took from this, was the journey that the parents had with their children.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that.
Well, and I tell you, thank you, David, that for some reason you just got to me. I just got emotional thinking about
Me
that.
too.
So thank you for this discussion. And I tell you, I can't thank Mike. I can't thank Lester. I can't thank each and every one of you all for taking the time to expand your mind. And I agree with you, Mike and David. This is a great opportunity. And Carter, you said it too, for all of us to come together and to have a forum where we can talk about this. And, and Mike, we appreciate you leading this discussion. Again, Lester, are we, I know next month is actually Thanksgiving Day. And as much as I love you guys, we probably are not going to be on this call on Thanksgiving Day. So I do know that, we are slowly coming to the last couple months of this leadership, and I'm looking forward to Lamont taking over the committee. And Lester, thank you so much for all that you've done. Thank you for all the agents and realtors that have been on this call. And with that being said, we will conclude today's book club.
Thanks, Mike. Great job.
Great job.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job.
Thank
Take
you
care,
all.
everyone.
It's really good.
Good job, Mike.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Great job.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.